Okay, so last week we talked about this idea of, was Jesus a real person? Now we're going over different controversial things, discussions, arguments that were submitted by the youth, and this was one that was on there, and surprisingly it's one that I'm hearing more and more and more of. I remember about maybe 12 or 15 years ago I encountered someone who said that Jesus never actually existed. There was no real person named Jesus of Nazareth. It was complete fiction. And I was just astounded. Well, I get if you don't want to believe in him, but to say he didn't even exist, that's ridiculous. But that's the claim. This is off of a skeptic website where they said it's possible that there was no historical Jesus at all. No historians, here are their claims, no historians of the first century mention Jesus, despite there being authors who write at length about Jewish concerns, and there are no Roman records that mention Jesus. Not only that, but there are no Christian eyewitnesses of Jesus. So they're saying that there are no mentions of Jesus in the first century, there are no Roman records, and there are no eyewitnesses. And that's what they claim. That's what they're saying. This person, Jesus, did not actually exist. And to which I say, poppycock. Here's the deal. First off, no eyewitnesses. We have the Bible. Oh, but that was written centuries later and made up. No. Actual, good, documented criticism and examination of the documents themselves shows that they were written at a very early date, within decades, 30, 40 years of Jesus. They were written by the people who claim to have written them. Okay, these are eyewitnesses. Matthew, John, Paul, James, Peter, Jude. These 6 people wrote books in the New Testament. They all knew Jesus. Okay, James was Jesus' half-brother. He knew Jesus. Mark and Luke did not personally walk with Jesus, but Mark was a disciple of Peter and Luke was a companion of Paul. And so here you have eyewitnesses and companions or students of eyewitnesses who are getting this material and this information very close to the original time that it happened. So to say that it wasn't written by eyewitnesses or there are no eyewitness accounts is just completely false. That is just not the truth of what the Bible is or what the Bible teaches. Then they say there's no historical evidence. Oh, there's no historical evidence. No one talked about it. No one wrote about it. There's no mention, but that's just not true. I'm not going to go through all of the details, but you have a large list of people, a pretty decent list of people, going from the first century into the second century, all talking about this guy Jesus and the movement he started. You have Cornelius Tacitus, I think is how you pronounce that. He's a Roman historian in the first century. He wrote about Nero blaming the Christians in 64 AD for burning Rome. Now, how 30 years later do you have a people, a religion, a movement, a group named after Jesus Christ big enough that the Roman emperor blames them for a tragedy? I don't know. It's just ridiculous that you wouldn't think that. Pliny the Younger was a Roman governor who wrote to Emperor Trajan because the Christians would not worship like they were supposed to worship, and they were causing problems in the population, and people did not like them, and they wanted something done, but they were really good citizens. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were upstanding, helpful people that you want in your community. They were peaceful. But they were technically breaking the law because they would not worship Roman gods or tribute to Caesar as a god. And so he didn't know what to do. Josephus, a Jewish historian, certainly no friend to Christianity, actually talks about this guy Jesus, who supposedly performed some miracles, who was crucified, and his believers said that he rose again. And so he's writing about this happening, a historian documenting that here is what happened. But people claim there's no documentation. A little bit later, you end up having the Babylonian Talmud. It's a Jewish religious writing. It's like a gathering of teachings from their top pastors, kind of a thing, rabbis. And in there, it references Jesus. Then there was a Greek writer who was making fun of Christians and of Jesus. And so you do have all of these instances where Jesus is being talked about, Jesus is being described. Even if you dismiss the Bible, you still get this whole idea that there was a guy named Jesus, that he did surprising feats, that he was crucified, his followers believed he rose from the dead, and his followers believed he was God. And that this belief spread very fast in keeping with the account in the book of Acts. And so even if you don't get the gospel from historical documents, you cannot avoid that a person lived in the first century whose name was Jesus. And so for them to say that there is no historical, and on a side note about the Bible, it is my firm belief that the only reason the Bible gets rejected is because it is the source of an active religion. If Christianity were tossed aside and no one believed it and the Bible was just some other ancient book, I guarantee you scholars would take it as historical documentation of events that happened. Yeah, they may dismiss all the supernatural and religious stuff, but they would at least accept that these things happened, even if they don't accept the meaning. But because it is an active religion, because God, the actual true creator of the universe, speaks to us through his word, oh no, they cannot have that. And so they have to dismiss what otherwise matches up, hands down, better than any other historical document in the world. And so they have to have a double standard when it comes to the Bible, because they cannot accept that God is real and Jesus was a son who died for our sins. And because they don't want to accept that, they create these convoluted theories to dismiss Jesus because they refuse to accept him for who he is.